There is a specific conversation people have with themselves about saving money that almost never results in saving money. It goes like this: once I pay off this credit card, I'll start saving seriously. And once I get the raise, I'll put aside 20%. And once the kids are through daycare, once the car is paid off, and once things settle down, then I'll save. The conditions are never quite met, and the threshold shifts forward each time the previous one is reached, and the years accumulate in waiting with no savings to show for them because the waiting is not a rational response to genuine financial constraint. This is psychological defense against the discomforts of saving now. In the imperfect present, conditions at an imperfect amount. And here's what that waiting actually costs and why now, not the future version of now, is the only moment of savings can happen. The cost of waiting specifically. Compound interest is the mathematical argument against waiting, and most people have heard it enough times that it no longer it lands with the force it deserves. So let's me make it specific rather than abstract. A 25-year-old who saves $200 per month and invests it at 7% average annual return will have $525,000 at age 65. A 35-year-old who saves the same $200 per month at the same rate will have 243,000 at the same age. The person who waited 10 years saved the same monthly amount for 10 fewer years and arrived with $282,000 less. A gap that is not 10 years or $200 contribution, $24,000 but 282,000 because the compounding that was missed in those 10 years compounded on itself for the remaining 30 years. The cost of waiting 10 years is not the money you didn't save, it's the money that would have grown into. And that number is always dramatically larger than the amount not saved because the exponential curve that compound growth produces over long horizons. And here's the version that makes this visceral. Every month of waiting costs approximately $700 to $800 in future wealth at values above. Not because you didn't save 200, because the 200 you did save would have grown to 700 to 800 by the time it was needed. And that is the actual monthly cost of waiting. The $200 is what it feels like. The 7 to $800 is what it is. And here's why the conditions will never be perfect. The conditions people are waiting for, the paid off debt, the higher income, and the stabilized life, are not forthcoming in the form they're imagined. Life does not simply simplify over time, and financial complexity does not resolve and leave a clear, uncrowded period for savings to begin. The paid off credit card is replaced by a car repair. The raise is absorbed by the rent increase. The kids out of daycare create different expenses rather than a gap in spending. The settled down future remains perpetually a few years ahead. This is not pessimism. It is the observable pattern of adult financial life. Expenses expanded to occupy available income, and life events create ongoing financial demands. And the simplification that would make savings easier is always approaching and never arriving. Waiting for it is waiting for something that has never existed for most people and will never exist in the form imaginable. The most financially productive people don't wait for better conditions. They save in the conditions that exist imperfectly at insufficient amounts in a life that is competing demands. And they do it consistently enough that the compounding has time to do what compounding does. And the minimum viable savings approach, the psychological barrier to started saving is not usually about the amount. It's about the gap between the amount you can save now and the amount that feels meaningful. $50 per month doesn't feel like it matters. $100 per month feels too small to make a difference. And the gap between what I can actually do and what would actually work feels too large to bridge. So nothing happens. And this framing is mathematically incorrect. At 7% per return, $50 per month starting at age 25 produces $131,000 by age 65. Not enough to retire on by itself, but $131,000 more than zero, achieved with 24,000 in actual contributions, with $107,000 produced entirely by compounding. The $50 per month matters. It matters because it compounds, and it matters because the $50 becomes 100 over time, and because becomes 200 as the savings habit builds and the financial situation evolves. Starting at 50 is not the destination. It is the beginning of a curve. The minimum viable savings approach is whatever you can automate without creating a cash flow crisis. Automated on the day your paycheck arrives at a separate institution where it won't be casually retrieved, and $25 per month automated is worth more over a 40-year horizon than $200 saved manually some months and not all at all in the others. The automatic $25 compound, the inconsistent 200 is indeterminated. The psychological trap of future self planning. Here's a specific cognitive error that produces waiting. Planning with the future self's resources rather than the present self's. When you imagine starting to save once, the credit card is paid off. You are imagining using the cash flow freed by the eliminated minimum payment, which is real and will be significant, as the starting point for savings. But you're imagining doing it as a future person who has solved the debt problem, whose financial life is more settled, whose relationship with money is improved by the resolution of the problem. The trouble is that the future person who inherits the freed cash flow is the same person as the present one, just with the specific problem of the credit card resolved. They will have the same spending habits, the same social pressures, the same income to desire ratio, and the same resistance to prioritizing the future over the present. And that certainly prevents savings. And the cash flow freed by the credit card payoff will not automatically convert to savings anymore, and then any other cash flow increase has in the past. This is why the subsequential approach first eliminate debt, then save consistently produces less wealth over a lifetime than the parallel approach, and save a small amount and pay down debt simultaneously. The psychological commitment to saving that develops during the debt payoff period is the infrastructure that converts the free cash flow into savings when the debt is gone. Without it, the free cash flow becomes a spending increase as lifestyle inflates to absorb the new availability. What parallel savings actually looks like too. For some currently saving down debt, automate a small savings amount, 3 to 5% of take home pay on the same day as the automatic debt payment, not instead of the debt payment, alongside it. This parallel approach does three things simultaneously. It builds savings habits and identity during the debt payoff period. So the habit is established when the debt is cleared and the cash flow is increased. It creates the starter emergency fund that prevents a new debt from being created into when unexpected expenses arrive. And it begins compounding. Even a small amount, even for a few years, produces a foundation that the larger contributions of the post debt period build upon. The mathematical case for parallel versus subsequential savings is a nuisance. There are interest rate scenarios where pure debt payoffs first is the strictly superior mathematical strategy for debt above 10% interest, and paying it aggressively before investing is correct. And for debt below 6% interest, the case for parallel savings alongside payoff is strong. And for debt between 6 and 10%, the answer depends on individual circumstances, and the psychological factors matters as much as the mathematical. The behavior case for parallel savings is not a nuisance at all. The people who waited to save until conditions are right consistently end up waiting longer than intended, arriving at the moment of clear conditions with no saving habit and watching the freed cash flow disappear into the same spending patterns that produced the debt in the first place. The one thing to do today, not this week, not when the paycheck clears, today. Open a high yield savings account at an online bank, Ally, Marcus, Fidelity Cash Management, or any institution with account minimum of zero at a rate of about above 4%. Transfer $25. Set up an automatic monthly transfer for your checking account to this account for the same $25 time for the day your paycheck typically arrives. And that's it. The conditions don't have to improve. The debt doesn't have to be paid off. The income doesn't have to increase. The account is open, the transfer is scheduled, the savings has begun. Everything after that is adjusted the amount upward as the financial situation evolves and the habit becomes the identity. But the compounding that produces wealth begins the day The first dollar is transferred, not the day the conditions are finally right. The conditions will never be finally right. The day is today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, like this video to the right. If you really liked today's video and you found it valuable, please subscribe. We would love to have you on this journey. Thanks for watching. Take care.